go. All right, what's going on, everybody? Wish that this was coming to you on a better day. This is Mike Dolce, host of Secrets of the Sire podcast. This is a Sire Spotlight. We get to do our New York Comic Con editors panel, courtesy of Comic Book School and Buddy Scalera. But some sad news right before we went live. Stan Lee has officially passed away, or at least that is all the reporting and from reputable sources. We're not talking about fake news or anything like that. To discuss what he did is going to take a whole show. So Wednesday we are going to devote our whole show to a celebration of Stan Lee. I don't think anybody needs to say anything. I mean, he created or co-created. He set the course for this person that you're staring at right now by creating all those characters. And again, I don't think you can take away anything that he did. So not that you would. So we're gonna celebrate his life. Spider-Man, X-Men, Hulk, Thor, Captain. Well, he didn't create Captain America, but brought him back. I mean, there's so many heroes, and he's got such a history. That I think it'll be a pretty cool show to do. So, all right. Well, this show, though, is devoted to that man on my right, which would be your right also, actually, if you're staring, Mr. Buddy Scalera. He lets us film and he lets us record from New York Comic Con. We had a couple audio issues, which is unfortunate because the video was pretty awesome. Next year, we'll stream from there as well, too. And we are going to talk editors panel. So it's Jimmy Palmiotti from left to right, Joe Rybandt, and Lysa Hawkins. Joe Rybandt's been on the show. Lysa Hawkins will be on the show in 2 weeks. And they just give you an in-depth of what it takes to be a comic book editor, and it's really, really cool stuff. So I think I'm pretty excited. I don't think we really need to do much except get right into it. So this is the editors panel from New York Comic Con, courtesy of Buddy Scalera. Go to comicbookschool.com. He's been a guest in the show. He'll be a guest in the show for many times coming up too. So enjoy.
So that we don't waste any time. Last panel was a little stuff to get started with. The guy in the back there with the blue shirt, his name is Liam Devine. Everybody, Liam, yay! He has free prizes for you that he will be handing out. I mentioned in the previous panel that we have a sponsor, Marvel Uchida. They provide markers for our pros, and they also provide them for you, which is pretty awesome. But one of the things that I'd like to note is that we get free stuff, but we will get more and more cool stuff for you guys only if you guys are sharing it on social. Right? I love that everybody's taking pictures of the cool stuff, celebs and cosplayers, but we have to share and show that we value professional education. And in order for us to do that is we have to enable our social media account. So how many of you are on Twitter? Not that many. How many of you are on Insta? Something else? Some other weird dark web that no one my age knows about? I guess Snapchatty or something? Listen, tag me. Tag the con more than anything. Take photos of professional education so that people understand that are at home going, wow, I didn't know that existed, right? Like, you have to let people know that this kind of valuable education exists. That's part of your responsibility. And you also get free stuff. So Liam's going to hand out free stuff. As we get started, I want to point out that when I used to work at Wizard, I had no budget. And I used to need to get things done, so I got interns. He's one of them. He started off, he was about 5 foot tall. You grow a lot when you're an intern. He was actually an online intern. But when I had interns in the Wizard office, I used to number them. We would have up to 3 over the summer, 3 per editor. So I numbered mine because it would dehumanize them in case they were killed in an industrial accident in the Wizard office, like an alligator ate them or something, or a pallet of comics fell on them. I wouldn't feel bad because I didn't really know them. They were just a number. So the interns used to actually compete who got to be intern number 1 that week, and they would try to outdo each other. They made that part of the game up. But now I have an intern for Comic Book School, and I'd like to welcome and have you welcome Ariel, the new intern number 1. The new intern number 1! We're going to show some of Ariel's work, and we're going to run through a couple things. But don't forget, there's a panel right after this. It's called Creator Connection. It's a great one for networking. Woo! Yeah, you can do better than that. Woo! Okay, so let's get started. We're on Editors and Editing. Our sponsors are General Pencil and Marvi Uchida. As you get those markers, please tag Marvi Uchida, tag New York Comic Con, make it a special thing. I'm Buddy Scalera. You can find me on all the social networks at Comic Book School, at comicbookschool.com, and don't forget your hashtag, which is NYCC. I am a comic book educator. For those of you who are familiar, I have published 6 books and 3 CD-ROMs, mostly a photo reference, but also a little bit about the craft and business of comic book publishing. I've also written a couple of comic books, including one from one of the editors here, so we'll talk about that as we go. I have a new comic book called Apocalypse Boulevard. Feel free to clap for that. And since we were talking about intern number 1 is an animation student, and I have decided to, that's right, she's an animation graduate. So we are going to take 1 minute, and I'm going to show you a quick trailer for Apocalypse Boulevard created by intern number 1. There's no audio. Where's the audio? No audio? I got no audio. What? Why is it muting? All right, one last try, and then we'll show you after the panel. All right, let's hear it for intern number 1. All right. She did a great job. Does anybody remember how I get this thing to run again? All right, we're going to do this. Start from current slide. Okay, so now we're in the actual part of our panel, Editors on Editing. We're going to just jump right to editor. Okay, so Editors on Editing. I'd like to introduce someone I've known for a very long time, since my Wizard days. We met during the early days of Wizard when he was working at Dynamic Forces, or not Dynamic Forces, another.
No, it was Dynamic Forces. I was at Wizard for a bit too.
Were you? I didn't know that.
I've been everywhere.
Have you?
I don't think this. Oh no, it's not. Never mind. Sorry.
17 years at Dynamite Comics, which he has helped literally define the publishing line and the voice of the entire company. He has worked to bring original properties and licensed properties to life, and brought a level of quality that typically we had not seen with licensed properties. Please welcome the editorial director of Dynamite Entertainment, Joe Rybandt. My next guest, you gave me some of my first work at Marvel Comics. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Actually, she gave a lot of aspiring writers and creators an opportunity to try their stuff, and was really has helped launch so many careers. She worked at Marvel, she worked at DC, she took a short break. Welcome back, editor at Valiant Comics, Lysa Hawkins. Okay, so this is an Editors on Editing panel. I'm going to have some questions prepared, but if at any point someone feels like they want to ask a question, go over by Glenn, who's standing over here, and we'll get your question answered, because since we don't have that many microphones, you'll just have to get up and move. It's very interactive, okay? So what's your philosophy of being an editor? We'll start with you, Joe. What's your philosophy of being an editor, and how do you approach editing? And by that I mean, are you a very strong forward editor that has your vision and they follow that vision, or are you trying to articulate the vision of the creators, or is it something of a mix of both because you're also working on many licensed properties?
Yeah, it's right person for the job, and then stay out of the way. Literally, I mean, it would be a very short panel if it was just me, because that would be it. But because we do so much stuff, there are a lot of layers. It's very important, particularly on the writing end, to start with the right person that has the right vision for the property that aligns with both the licensor and the publisher, and that can also deal with, if you're dealing with a difficult licensor, changes that come down the pipe. And when it came to creating original content, our probably biggest original content would be The Boys, which will be on Amazon next year. That was just making sure that Garth had what he needed when it came to the artists that worked on the book, the colorists that worked on the book, the letterers that worked on the book, and all that. So it was really much more a trafficking position to some extent because it was Garth's book. So really both. And again, that's also about the right people for the right job. So.
Now Lysa, you've worked at all the publishers, at least in the New York area, so you probably have a lot of experience in different editorial styles. What's your style, and then what editorial values do you bring now, Valiant, as the editor there?
Well, sorry, can you hear me? Well, I agree with Joe, actually. I believe the right person, you should get the right person for the job. However, there are times when the editorial, has a mindset of what they want to bring to the property and a direction that they want to go. And in that case, you kind of need to steer towards something. So I would steer it towards something if need be. But my style of editorial, I like the Marvel method. I'm a big fan of the Marvel method. I believe that creators should have as much power to do whatever they need to do in the book, from the artist to the writer. It should be shared.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It should be shared.
Sure. Now, before we get into the inevitable questions about breaking in, because that's what half the audience will want, the other half wants to know about being an editor. Lysa, how do you keep your editorial skills sharp? Let me try that again. Buddy, take two. Lysa, how do you keep your editorial skills sharp? Like, what do you do as in your personal life, in your private life? What do you do to keep your skills sharp? Because I know once you get into the office, it's just probably a fire drill of tracking things down and keeping things on track.
Basically, read, watch a lot of stuff on television, because I find myself looking at a television show and editing it and saying, oh, what was wrong with that there? And then if I can figure out a better ending, oh, well, that's really bad. So
You'll find that you ruin a lot of things for yourselves, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. I can't, and forget about the Marvel movies. I'm constantly going, oh no, or oh my God, that's so wonderful.
How about you, Joe? What do you do to keep sharp as an editor?
Yeah, I guess we're just going to complement each other's existence here, because I do the same thing. It's a lot about reading. The only, and I don't know if you would elaborate on this, but I tend to read more nonfiction than fiction. And I do tend to stay away from some of the genre stuff and watch, real world stuff or more real world based stuff than genre stuff. We don't do a traditional superhero series. We do some things in the superhero space. And I think that the reality that is out there, whether it's televised entertainment or movies or nonfiction, are things that you can bring into that type of work that make it more grounded in today's world. And yeah, I can't watch a single, there are very few shows, even Breaking Bad, which is one of the great, people think one of the greatest. I mean, I was all over that thing, watching it, going, what, from episode one, like, why would they do this? Why aren't they doing this? So you do tend to ruin a lot of things for yourself.
You can't turn it off, right?
No.
You can't.
And also, I think it's important. I think this is important for anyone that wants to be in the business, is to stay in touch as much. Well, it was a lot easier when I started, but it's very difficult now to stay in touch with what's going on in pop culture in general. I mean, we live in a pop culture world. I have 2 kids, and try to tap into what's going on in their world. It becomes more and more difficult as things progress. You mentioned all the various social media. There's a ton of social media. I don't know what it is, but just stay immersed in reality. Don't go down. Don't get in a bubble of just superhero comics or just comics in general.
What's the danger of that? Just because I think sometimes we hear that, but what does that really mean? Unpack what you just said, which don't just get involved with superheroes
Well,
and reading comics.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of what you see and the people that break through into a different zone than the rest of the creative world, someone like Tom King or Scott Snyder, they have brought something from outside in. And that something from outside was not just knowing the entire Silver Age history of Marvel, you know. And there's other examples. Tom's just top of mind because he worked in the CIA. I mean, he's got a fascinating resume, you know, and he's actually probably a rarity to that extent. But bring the outside world in. I think that's what they started doing when comics started, you know. So don't just stay in the circle of comics.
I listen to NPR. You know, and I think that's important though, because bringing the real world into comics in a fantastical way,
Sure.
you know, just makes it more deep, more meaningful, and the stories, truth.
This month, in All Things Considered.
Yes, exactly.
So Lysa, just talking about bringing things from the outside, you're a boomerang to the business. What did you bring back now? What's your perspective? How has your perspective changed?
When I took my hiatus, I was teaching comics to kids, so you know it was a totally different place. I was teaching young people to be enthused about comics and how to make a comic, and it was thrilling to see their excitement. And I'm talking about elementary school kids, not little kids, and they were digging it and they wanted more. And I was just like, wow, that's so wonderful, because when I was in comics before, I felt like only 40-year-old men were reading it. And now, look at these kids, And so there's a whole generation out there that's dying for it.
But what did you learn? What else did you pick up that you've learned since you have come back? Like you worked in the outside world. Like
Yeah.
Joe was, worked straight through 17 years, which has one perspective. What's your perspective as somebody who boomeranged back and did different experiences?
Yeah, what's changed?
What's changed?
I don't know that. Well, a lot's changed. I mean, it's a whole new world. When I was at Marvel, we were just changing over into digital, and now everything is digital. And it blew my mind not too long ago to realize that people could ink off of scans. I couldn't believe that. How could they do that? But it's very exciting. All of the new things are very exciting, and there's just so many more things to explore, so many more avenues to explore now, and stories that would never be told before that people are doing. They're telling these great stories, pushing the envelope.
The industry has never seen more diversity of content and diversity of creative than ever before. I mean, it's as wide open as it's ever been, and I've been in it for a pretty long time, but not as long as some. But a pretty long time, and it's never been more diverse in all fashion. So, which is great. I mean, that's there's something for everyone.
Why do you think that there is this burgeoning diversity that we didn't have for many years, and now you're starting to see now?
I think the companies shifted. The market shifted, technology shifted, society shifted. I think everything just shifted. I mean, everything has evolved. And
I think the attention to the movies has really brought so many more people into our playground that just weren't interested before. But now they're like, wow, that's cool.
Which had last happened for those that were around in about 1988, 89 with the Burton Batman. I worked retail at the time, and that was kind of similar, not nearly on the scale of what you see now, but that was kind of the first kind of opening of the floodgates. Like, when you bring in these characters, whether people read the comics or not, everybody knows. I think the Mickey Mouse and Spider-Man are the two most recognizable characters on the planet. Something like that. Batman, Spider-Man, something like that. But up there with Disney, with Mickey. So even if you don't know what a comic book story is, you don't know what a comic book is. Your awareness is way up just because of what's going on everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts on process?
I have no thoughts on
Script comes in. What do? Are you cracking it open and analyzing it? You're breaking it open and reading it on the screen, printing it? What are you looking for? Are you marking it up? And as an editorial person, depending on if it's a one-shot or a 5-issue miniseries or an ongoing, what are some of the thought process? Pick it up anywhere you want, but how do you work? It's really a way of working question.
Well, I'm with Joe. If you find the right person, you pretty much don't have to do too much with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my goal, is that I never want to put right on my page.
Right.
You know, if I have to, I have to. You know, I'm certainly going to tell a person if I need them to do something for the integrity of the character or the integrity of the script to make the change. But you know, I put the creators there to do their creating, for the most part. I'm thrilled that I got a great script last night. I'm like, I don't have to do anything with this now. So I just pass it off to everybody else to approve, and it's done.
Yeah, and it's not always about, you know, I think that especially for someone that wants to think about breaking in, right person for the job doesn't necessarily mean someone that's been doing it forever.
Correct.
There have been several writers that I've worked with that hadn't written comics, that they were the right people for the job and they had the skills, they just had them. You know?
Yeah.
And to kind of elaborate on your question, I mean, you know, I think the world, Dynamite and Valiant are two very interesting examples, because Valiant is a self-contained, you know, superhero type universe, and you've got different things all moving in conjunction, whereas Dynamite has a million different things moving in a million different directions that never intersect. So in some cases with a licensed property, it's about an outline than a script. You know, it's making sure that outline is approved if you have to deal with Universal or Sony, or we publish the James Bond comics or the Flemings in the UK. And then that script is really just making sure that you're on the path to, whether it's a 5-issue series or a finite series or whatever it is, that you're on the path, that there's enough going on in that you're ending where you wanted to, that you're ready to pick up with issue 2 from the ending of issue 1, that there's enough in there. That also, you know, to dive a little further into it, depending on who the artist is, whether it plays to the artist's strengths, whether there's spots in there that you're going to need to massage with the artist, because it's a very text-heavy script, or there's not a lot of action, or there's no splashes, or there's no spreads, you know. So each one is unique in that sense, but it's all about it's 1,000 times easier with the right person, a professional, and again, that doesn't have to be someone that's been doing it forever.
When I look at a script, I always ask myself, where does this push the character forward? Where is this going to leave our character in the Valiant universe? And you know, are we going to add to the character? We need to develop it a little bit more. You know, why else do it if not, you know, if not to further push our character, push our world, and you know, make it more exciting. You know.
Yeah.
So, how many of you here are writers? How many of you here are artists? All right, so 50-50 split. Let's ask a writer question. Harder question. Writers breaking in. Give us some thoughts about writers who want to break in. You guys are probably inundated at your booths and your email addresses. Talk to us about the rights and the wrongs. And also, you have a rarefied event, 4 days under the same roof together.
Right.
Thoughts about people breaking in right and wrong things. Lisa, you want to start?
Sure. My suggestion is get to know everybody. You know, really get to know people. Go up to their booths, talk to people, ask their opinions, be friendly, and ask to submit something. And most people will say, "Sure, show me something." That's it. Open the door. You have to open the door for the communication, and then accept criticism. If somebody gives you, somebody tells you have to kill your darlings, because it's not working for whatever the pitch is. And remember, you're not playing with your own characters, you're playing with somebody else's. And I have to be the advocate for my character. You know, if you want to come in there and take my character to that next level, I'm gonna be your advocate to do that. But you have to be true to the character.
Wait, before we go on to the next thing, what does it mean to accept criticism?
Well, you know, you might hear something that you don't want to hear, like it's not working, the story's not working, or that you need to flesh out more, or you have to, you know, give up something that you might not want to give up. You know, I've gotten a lot of pitches before from people who have given me great pitches, and it's like, well, this is a wonderful story, but it's not the story I need. You know, and can you give me this story? And they'll send me back a revision, and it's still the story that they gave me the last time. And that's the person that's not accepting what I'm hearing, or what I'm trying to tell them, teach them. And it's not that story was bad. It was just not what I needed.
Yeah, I think also be prepared to accept silence. You know, silence ultimately sometimes is your answer. And that's not something to be offended by, and that's not something to take personally. But I get a lot of stuff, and I can't get back to everyone, and the silence is the answer. It's not always the answer, and don't give up. I think in this day and age, there's no excuse for anyone that's an aspiring writer or artist to be published. And that doesn't mean you have a comic at Marvel. That just means you can have a digital comic, you can publish it yourself.
That's
Whatever you need to do, because quite honestly, if you're a writer trying to break in, you sending me a script of a character I don't know, a book I don't know, by the same token, you sending me a Spider-Man script that you wrote, that doesn't do me any good either. Put it in motion. Get an artist friend, whatever you need to do. There is no reason to not be published in 2018. So what we're in? In 2018, going into 2019, because that's a better example than or a book. I mean, if you're a novelist, that's a whole different thing. I've worked with plenty of novelists that have come to comics. Ben Percy, who was writing Nightwing, is a novelist. We also do a lot of adaptations of books into comics. So get published, get a friend, get it in front of everybody, and be cool. Like, just don't be a pain.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that goes to showing professionalism. That goes to showing the very basics of human functioning in society. Just be cool.
Wait, just go back to something I think is really important. You guys understand that you can self-publish anything. You can get it on digital. You can put it as a PDF. You can do a short run of your book. I have a short run of my book, and I'll just be transparent. I printed enough copies to give it to editors that I make. I have no intention of publishing it for reels. It's just for me to be able to give it out as a portfolio piece. But the question I see, and I hear from other writers and other artists say, well, the script wasn't very good that I was working from. And then writers say, well, that artist wasn't very good. How willing are you to look past the complete package to get to what the person wants to show you? So a writer sometimes can only afford to work with an artist who will work with an indie.
For a sample like that, I wouldn't be looking at the art at all. Right. I would be just reading the story, and envisioning who I would put as the artist on it. Also, there's so many indie companies right now. There's so many places to get yourself seen. When I was looking for a writer for Birds of Prey, I looked at Killer Princesses, and I said, Gail Simone, who is this Gail Simone? I like Killer Princesses. Next thing I know, I hired her for Birds of Prey, and she was wonderful.
What about the flip side? There's a lot of artists who are suffering through scripts from amateur writers.
Well, again, the artists have an advantage right off the bat. It's a visual medium. So when I pick up a comic book, I'm looking at the art. I'm not looking at the words. That's what gets me first, is if I like the art. If I don't like the art, but the first page captures me because the words are so, oh my gosh, I need to find out what happens on the next page, then they've sold me already.
Yeah, good art can also cure a variety of ills as well.
That's right.
Just like good coloring can fix a lot of art, and there's everything is a process, and everything complements each other, and it really just depends. It is easier for an artist to walk up with a portfolio than it is for a writer, especially someone that's trying to get started. It's a lot easier for an artist because, again, the shortcut is right there. Here's your portfolio, and I will say from the portfolio raise, I do put your newer stuff first. Everyone's got a big portfolio, and it's usually like, I think this is my best stuff. Just show me, show me front or back to front, front to back.
How many pages?
I don't know. You can usually tell in 3 to 5, maybe 5 to 10. And it is interesting to see the older stuff to be like, okay, here's where they came from. I've done portfolio reviews at the Kubert School, and that's kind of the method that they do. They show what they did at the beginning of the session through to the most recent, when the portfolio review is. But your most recent work should be your best. I don't think there's any good reason for your most recent work to be your worst.
Unless, of course, they change styles.
That's true.
If
sure.
they have a bunch of different styles to show, then
Yep.
I want to see all of their different
Right.
styles, because I might not want the dark and gritty, but I might want the
Right.
cartoony one for something.
Right. Absolutely.
Depending on
Sure.
the project.
Sure. For
Now,
sure.
thinking through artists breaking in, a lot of artists mistakenly believe that they get their first assignment, they can go quit their day job, and that's it. They're on their, say, Talk about, give them a dose of reality. Explain what it is when an artist gets that first experiment assignment, and then when are they going up and accepting the Eisner?
The only thing I'll say that you're right. You can't get started and quit your day job, but you can't get started, keep your day job, and not deliver on a deadline. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg. You know, I would never advocate someone just starting out, you know, quitting their job just to do comics, because you never know, right? But for the most part, looking for 5 to 6 pages a week, you know, 20, 22 pages in 4 weeks. If you can do that and do your day job, great, you know, but that does not sound like a lot of fun to me. But if you've got the drive and that's your goal, you're going to have to do that, you know. And if you're married and have kids and you factor, you know, it does not sound like a good, and it's not going to just all go away after that first month, you know, because it's going to be 3 to 6 months before that rhythm develops and more work starts to come from that, you know, so, or longer.
That's right.
Anything to add, Lisa?
Hopefully this isn't too doom.
No.
No, it's hard. It's a hard industry to survive on. It is. You know, there are those that make it, and it's great. You know, but a lot of people are struggling. I just spoke to somebody today who, interestingly enough, I brought in as an intern to Marvel Comics, and he's still working there now. And he's a wonderful artist. I gave him work as well. But he's wonderful, and he's got a successful book, but he doesn't want to give up his job because he's got a child, and he's got bills to pay.
Lisa, great point, and same with you, Joe. We've all known each other for a long time. You gave me some early work. Joe, we've worked together and collaborated on many of these things. How important is networking and relations in the comic book business?
It's crucial.
Yeah, it's changing though too, you know, but it is crucial, but it is changing, you know, just like everything else is changing. Obviously this is a bad example because this place is a mob scene out there, but there's so many conventions and it's not quite the same as it was. And a lot of networking is done in different ways. You know, you see a lot of people get started online that, you know, I think one of the most famous within the last 10, 15 years was Warren Ellis's forum, which got the careers going of a lot of people. You know, Kieran Gillen, Matt Fraction, a whole bunch of people that were all like-minded on Warren's forum that ended up doing projects together and getting it started. They never, you know, maybe they set foot in a convention every once in a while, but that's not how they got going, you know. But this is still a prime way of getting in front of people. You know, there is still the very tangible aspect of getting in front of people.
Get an internship.
I'd also like to jump in, and I think probably it's worth noting, somebody once asked me advice, how do you break into comics and how did you break in as a writer? And I've never had a pitch accepted. Really, just a cold pitch has never been accepted. My advice has been, and continues to be, close the bar. Joe Quesada's been sharing photos from the early 90s of the early days of comics, and you look in the background and there, you know, there's Lisa and Joe and me and whomever is popping up. I don't drink alcohol at all, but I'll close the bar. I'll drink a lot of seltzers, but some of the best conversations happen 12, 1, 2 in the morning in openers, and what was the downstairs one that was in the village?
Yeah.
That they locked the door. If you were in, you were in, right?
Yeah.
It was like an after-hours bar. So building those relationships, even if you don't think these people can help you, sometimes becomes just a relationship of somebody who's your biggest cheerleader. So build those relationships. The next panel will be talking about networking, but I always tell people, close the bar. I know you're tired, and I know you have to get up for work tomorrow, but you may never have another opportunity to be hanging out and just talking with people who are in your exact same tribe and share the same values. So there's also a networking, we'll be talking about that after this tomorrow and Saturday. So please definitely keep in mind that networking is hugely important. So I think we have our first question. What's your name? Sasha. Sasha?
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, you guys mentioned how having a good team is the key to good editing and everything. My question mostly is, when you have that good team, how often do you just pass it when you get the script, or do you really look at it, or do you just pass it because you know it's good? Or
Are you talking about having an internal team like associates and
Or
assistants? Or are you talking about the creative team?
creative team, a good creative team, like from writer to do they show you it, and then are they okay to pass it to the artist, or
No.
are you?
Oh yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
No, it's, it goes, the communication between the writer and the team develops as the process develops, but the writer, you should never send the script, to the editor and the artist at the same time, or to the artist, it's got to come from me or someone that works at the company, and then go, because it has to be cleared, just whether it's an internal clearance or an external clearance, whatever it is, notes given, whatever, even whether they're minor or they're major, whatever, and deadlines have to be discussed with that artist. So it's part of that's what the process is.
And when the pencils come in, it's my job then to look at the pencils and make sure that it's doing its job. It's got all of the panels and everything that the script is asking for. It's all there and present.
And if the writer wants to be engaged at that point, some do, some don't. You share artwork as it's coming in. It really depends on what the project is, who the writer is. I'd say 9 times out of 10, the writer wants to see what's going on. There's very few exceptions of a writer that's
Absolutely.
just gonna like say do whatever.
Absolutely.
Joe, a quick question, and Lisa, same thing. You guys just talked about deadlines. What's the
They're
importance?
very important.
Incredibly important.
If you can't meet your deadline,
You have to be honest.
Yeah.
okay.
And as quickly as
I've heard
possible.
every single excuse ever from now until infinity.
And
Me
what's
too.
the best way that someone can tell you that they might not be able to hit that deadline? What are your thoughts?
Exactly that way.
What's your
Yeah.
thought?
I
They
can't hit my deadline. I need another day. I need another week. Whatever's going
They
on.
have to be honest.
Yep.
If they give me an excuse, then I'm going to write them off. If unless I know that they're telling me the truth, they have to be truthful with me.
Excuses are not reasons.
No. No, the things happen. Life happens. It gets in the way. People, tragedies happen and people need to take the time off. That's fine. The script that I got in yesterday that I'm so pleased about, it was supposed to be in the day before. But he said, I'm so sorry, I can't make this deadline. And I said, fine, that's fine. Give it to me the next day. And he gave it to me the next day, and we're fine.
Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Palmiotti who just stopped
Yay,
in.
Palmiotti.
So by a snafu of scheduling, Jimmy is in 2 panels at the same time.
Right. The other me is ruining it over there.
Yeah. So, everybody, Jimmy Palmiotti, he's a writer. He's worked on everything from Marvel, everything from DC. He's been an editor. He's been a mentor to all of us, and really was responsible for helping me break in and do my first work at Marvel. So for that alone, give him a round of applause. Yay!
Hi, my name's Jonah. This is from a slightly different angle. As someone who may want to be an editor, what are some qualities or experiences, things on a resume? If you're hiring, an editorial assistant or someone along those lines, what are some things that might jump out at you as someone who would make a good candidate?
Well, story. I'd want to know what your background is. I mean, your college. Were you a writer? Were you a journalist? I was a history major, but I studied ancient history, specifically mythology, which I believe comic books are modern myths. So I walked right into it. So yeah, it would be, what's your background? And I'm going to be upfront. I think the best way to get into editorial is get in through the back door, become an intern.
Yeah.
Because interns become assistants become editors.
Yeah, we haven't actually, our intern program has produced more people in our production department than it has editorial. We've been fortunate in the sense that, well, fortunate is maybe not the right word, but when DC moved out of New York, there were people that did not move with them, so we brought on some people that were already in editorial into Dynamite. But I think that the internship probably works better in that system. For sure.
I would also check your social media. That would be me. I would check all your past social media. See if you're an asshole. Or not.
Clean it up.
See if you're abrasive. See if see how what your thinking is. Get to know you. Social media is great for that. If you don't delete stuff, we'll get to know you real quick. It has a lot to do with if I have to work with somebody for a while and look at if they're going to be fighting for every little thing, or it has a lot to do with your personality, and it gives us a good insight without actually even having to be with you in the room.
Right.
So it's something to keep in mind.
tenacity is a strength with editorial, but it can go, it can go too far.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that's right.
My name is Jake, and I had a question. You kind of talk about working with either first-time writers, first-time artists, versus kind of highly developed, people like a Garth Ennis or Warren Ellis. How much, and then you kind of talk about letting the writer basically do their own thing. Do you find that you have a harder time kind of pulling the editor card with a bigger name?
Sure, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, but that's it depends on the relationship and it depends on the project. Again, to talk about something like The Boys, that was Garth's book. I mean, my only notes were potential concerns with whether it be content, and not that we weren't going to do it, but just to say, we should all be aware of what is. I mean, it was a very extreme book. And also really just, again, to work with Garth on what it means for the schedule, but I can't think of real notes I gave. Now, when we worked with Warren on Bond, it was a little bit different. There were some notes, but they weren't, again, he was hired to do it because of who he is, and it was really more just some house cleaning type stuff. It wasn't anything about his story because his story was fully formed. That's why we hired him. So
Let them be them.
yeah,
kind of,
I mean, and that's because that's who those guys are.
Garth doesn't like notes.
Yeah.
Not one.
No.
Well, for the writers, for the most part, my top end writers I don't need to give them notes because they're doing what I need them to do. I have given direction to artists. One notably was Bill Sienkiewicz did a Batgirl issue for me many years ago, and he gave her heels, and this was the young Batgirl, Cassandra, and I said, you've got to kick those heels off. He said, but I like them. I was like, I don't care, so he had to redraw the page, or ink out the heels,
All right, thanks.
Good evening,
Hi.
guys. My name is Chris. I wanted to know, I've gone to some cons before. I know some people look for sequential story art. I do have one or a few that I'm in the works with, but if I didn't have any sequential story art on me, is there a way that I can present you guys, or just, in general, like artwork, or whether it be an Instagram page, or whether it be pages or things on my tablet, would I still have a shot?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just don't.
Submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Easy.
Just don't.
I asked because because I know that was like an emphasis, a lot. I can understand, the whole comic page and having that, but I just want to know, like, if people get a chance to actually like look at your art and stuff, and if they like it or they don't, like, would that even.
What I've seen a lot of in doing portfolio reviews is a lot of pinups and a lot of covers. You're not going to get hired out of the gate as a cover artist. I mean, it's just So you mentioned sequentials there at the start. It is about sequentials, but figure out a way to present it. It doesn't have to be a physical presentation of paper and ink, but figure out a way to present it that I'm not searching for it. That it's all whatever you want to put, that it's all there, and it can be done electronically. It can be done in person. It can be done in a million different ways.
Hi, I'm Jack. I wanted to know, after all of your years of editing, what are your most frequent criticisms of writers? Like, what are the pitfalls you prefer they avoid? Or what kind of criticisms keep repeating over the years?
Not listening. And understanding the character, not just reinventing it, but understanding what came before. And if you're going to reinvent it, you have to know what came before. You can't just throw it out there and say, I have a lot of people that at the time when I was editing would say, here's my take. And I'm like, okay, but Michael doesn't speak. Right? And things like that. So be aware of what you're doing.
Absolutely. No, that's right.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I think the thing that a lot of writers fall into is the overcommitment to work, and not able to meet deadlines as a result. And if a writer isn't writing, the whole thing is foobarred, and because there's very little to do. It's with the projects that I've worked on, that we've done, replacing the writer has almost never been a viable option. Just depending on what it is. It's like it's DEF CON 1, the bad one. It's whatever. It's so Yeah, but it's easier to swap out an artist, or it's easier to swap out a color. It's easier to swap out almost anything else than the writer at some point. So, and sometimes that comes from an overcommitment of work, and that's not able to meet deadlines. Because it just grinds the whole thing to a stop.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Julian. I'm a writer. I write my first novel, my first book. I'm in Spanish, and I'm paid in my country unfortunately my 51st page. I love the fantasy, but I need support. I need get the best thing of how can I do that? I need support. I have so many ideas for write. Am I right? Always the straight. What do you say about that?
So you write in your native country. You've been published.
I write before then. I come in here for sell my book. So I want to sell my stories like a novel fantasy, like Marvel.
Did you translate it?
Yeah,
I didn't want to speak
I
the
pay
obvious.
so much. I working so hard for
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
I pay, but I let maybe 300 more. I have so many.
Slow down. Yeah, slow it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy could probably speak more to this, but find that one or two and work the hell out of it, right?
Any good writer has 1,000 things going on. Find the one that's to you, that means something to you.
Yeah.
Focus on that, make that the best you can, and go out with that. Because it's hard when somebody comes up to you and says, I have 300 ideas. Usually that means I have to go. I can't listen to 300.
I don't have 300 minutes.
Right, but I have like one great idea. The best thing I can do. You push that. That's what you push first.
That's right.
Okay?
If you have a great Superman story, write that Superman story and pitch it over to DC, and then you can, if you become, a household name with DC, you can bring your own stories in.
Yes.
Right.
I support
Maybe
that.
2 if you can't help yourself.
Yeah.
I told you before. After this, I sent some email like something.
Sure.
I want to go up.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Sure.
As the next question comes up, how do people get things into your hands?
$100 bill.
Yeah.
$100 bill?
We have a submissions page on our website.
Yes, so does Valiant.
And it goes right to me. Goes to a couple of other people in editorial as well. So
Hey, first of all, thank you for doing this panel. My name is Havana. I work on a comic called Kamikaze. And Joe, your advice about self-publishing really resonated with me. That's kind of what we've been doing with our comic. And we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? Like, how do we pitch the book? I mean, we've built up a reader base, so we've proven the concept, but of course we don't have the distribution and everything of a publishing company.
yeah, we've picked up projects that were previously published at other places, most famously The Boys. But from exactly like what you're saying, whether it be a Kickstarter from someone that's well known that then they need to distribute it to the direct market, we have a mechanism for that. It depends. Any publisher that you're going to go to is going to ultimately say, what do we get out of it? Because it's not just distributing a comic to the direct market for free, and that deal can work a million different ways. So be very, very careful of who you speak to, and be very prepared to give something up, and be very prepared to accept what that is, whatever that is, whether it's a piece of it, whether it's, I don't know what it is. It can be a million different things. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, for example, if you were to bring something creator-owned over to Valiant, it would no longer be yours.
Right.
It would be Valiant's.
And we have kind of a mechanism to do creator-owned, but it's not the same as like Images, and it's not the same as, every company has their own way of doing creator-owned or company shared or whatever you want to call it. So you can find, and again, I think networking is a key way to find out from people that have done that. Well, what was your, without going into numbers, what was the broad strokes of your deal, and finding out that way.
Thank you so much.
But congratulations on doing it. That's the first step right there.
Just a fresh reminder to all of you who have social media, if you're hearing a great quote, share it with your community. Make sure you tag NYCC. Make sure you tag me. We have to get the word out that educational panels for professional level education is important. So you have to be part of that. So make sure you're feeding your social media feed with positive stuff. And these truth bombs, these are great truth bombs. So feel free to share them.
It kind of turned into two questions. With the 100, does that have to be one bill, or can I get like 20s, 5s?
I don't care.
Oh, you don't care? So it could be quarters?
A sock full of quarters.
Really? How about like 5 socks full of pennies? All right. Okay, back. That's gonna be a lot of change. I, as a writer, I was always under the impression that it had to be 32 pages for the comic. 2 years in, about 4 scripts later, found out the truth. 22 pages.
Or 20.
Or 20.
Or 20, yeah. Problem is, I've tried to shrink the scripts down and, rewrote them, and it's still at 27. It's still kind of too damn long. So is there a way to deal with that, or on your end, or should it just be me rewriting it?
Just pitch an outline first, and then the editor will make sure it's the right size.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to go in and take something you have already written and bring it down so that you can show it around, I take it as what you're.
Well, it was like a first draft. Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, I'm just gonna I could do this.
You might be being too precious with it,
All right.
There's nothing that can't be cut.
Okay, cool. All right, no, that's what that helps. So. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much.
So.
Good question. Jimmy. Go ahead.
If you're self-publishing, it can be whatever size you want it to be.
Yeah.
So true story. I was breaking in. I was doing my first script with Jimmy, or my second script, and we were working on Deadpool for Marvel. And it was Jimmy told me I had new writeritis, which is a very common disease. He took the script and he said, "Do a word count, cut it by 50%." And I was aghast. I couldn't believe that I had to cut this precious stuff. This is gold. And yet it actually worked better with 50% less words. Jimmy, why did that work? Why did new writeritis result in 50% less words and a better outcome?
Enthusiasm has a lot of noise. And it's just that too much type, people don't want to read it. It's like it's just the flow of a comic.
Unless it's Bendis.
Yeah, what's that?
Unless it's Bendis.
Unless it's even still, he'll have pages. He'll have pages with nothing on it, right? And then all of a sudden it's work. But the artist gets mad when you cover all the art with word balloons. They don't like it either. But it's just to say what's going on. You have to allow the art to tell the story. And if you're gonna do something, there was a famous panel. I'm not gonna say by who, but it was 2 characters walking under a tree, and it was fall, and it was a bird whistling. It was a bird singing in the tree, right? And the one character's looking up, and he goes, "Look at the bird! It's singing in the tree." The bird had a word balloon. It had a musical note coming in. It just kept going. Like in this one panel, and honestly, the whole panel didn't need anything, right?
Yeah, it's not novel. I mean, in a novel, that's where you're painting the scene without pictures, and Jimmy nailed it. I mean, you're covering the page with balloons,
right? And it's called a book.
Yeah.
If you want to just get rid of the art,
right. Or have a text page.
Well, the art needs to speak for itself. The art should be the storyteller.
And it's it's 2 people working together. The artist and the writer. So I mean, they need their own space.
I think it's important to note, and you see this actually. Not to keep on mentioning Tom King, but I just read some of read the most.
Are we picking on Tom?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just read the most recent issue of Mr. Miracle, and there's a lot of silent pages, but they're still written.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I don't work with Tom, haven't seen the scripts, but I can, I've been in that space to see but they're still written. It's not just, blank page, 9 panels, So he's letting the artist tell that story without words. It's beautiful. I mean, it's the ultimate in the collaborative process, if you can convey it. And I actually just recently read that classic issue of G.I. Joe that's all silent, and it's still a classic because it's brilliant, and it was written. It's all silent, but it was still written.
Buddy, don't feel bad because Kevin Smith's first comic had to be edited like crazy. With Daredevil, we had to edit a lot, had to take a lot out.
It was the best advice I had ever gotten, which was, you can say more with less, and also to think visually. I remember you have to solve the problem first visually, and then add text that doesn't repeat. It enhances.
Exactly.
So don't restate the obvious. Oh, we have another question.
I have another question. For writing, when they present you or submit a script, do you guys prefer the regular way, where it's panel 1, this happens, panel 2, this happens, or do you prefer the Marvel way, where it's just like a more artistic side? And
You have to earn. I think, the Marvel method to some extent. Full script.
Full script seems to be mostly accepted nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say we've worked with Marvel method is a shortcut, and for people that don't know what Marvel method is, it's plot style. There's no dialogue and leaves some to the artist, and depending on what it is.
Well, there is dialogue, but you first start with plot,
Right.
and then it goes to the penciler, and then the penciler pencils it, and then the pencils go back to the writer, who then dialogues it.
Right. So, but yeah, full script.
All right, one last question.
Oh boy. So one thing that you hear a lot from editors is to always know who you're pitching to and make sure that you're sending it to the right people. I thought, just because there are probably a lot of people in the room, do you guys have something that you kind of, is your specialty, is something that you like to see if someone is trying to submit something to you?
Yeah, I'm not sure to follow.
I just want a good story.
Yeah.
I don't care. But whoever submits it, if you submit a good story, I'm gonna hire you.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So first, just a quick general round of applause for our editors who donated their time. The absolute best way to thank creators is to check out their work and buy their work. So if you guys feel like you enjoyed this, go check out some of the comic books that they have created. So first, Joe, tell them where they can find you and what you're really excited about that's coming out next that you've edited.
Oh my God. You can't find me here because we're not exhibiting this year. And actually, oh God, it goes to press next week. I forget what that means when it goes in the stores. There's a new Greg Pak James Bond series that I'm very happy with. So I'd recommend checking that out. It's got an update with the Odd Job character, because our Bond stories are told in current times, as opposed to, we also do adaptations, a little complicated, but I would say check that out. I think it's in stores first week of November.
And what's the social handles for Dynamite? I know that you're not personally on.
Yeah, I think it's Dynamite, everything, Dynamite.com, Twitter Dynamite, Facebook Dynamite Entertainment.
Lysa, how about you? Where can they find you, and what are you really excited about that's coming out next that you've edited?
Well, Valiant's here, so go on upstairs. We're on the main floor. Find our booth. I will be doing portfolios tomorrow for any of our artists here from 11 to 12. So come on by and see me. I am working on Faith Dreamside. I'm working on Britannia. And I can't tell you, unfortunately, about the cool things I'm developing for next year because they told me I can't. But they're really cool, so check me out in a couple of months. You're going to hear all about it.
And where can they find you on social or Valiant? What's the best?
Oh yeah,
social?
you can find me I'm on Facebook. I'm on. You can always just reach out to Valiant. You can find me on the Valiant website.
Jimmy, in 30 minutes or less, what do you have that's coming up?
Just working on Wonder Woman for the Walmart books with the Banda. And I doing that. That's all we're doing right now. So we're relaxing and having a good time.
There's some wristwatches and
Amanda has a watch in the Invicta booth upstairs. 444 is the booth. Amanda designed the Harley Quinn watch, so they have that up there. We'll be signing there, and I think I have a signing tomorrow for the Marvel Knights anniversary, 20th anniversary signing tomorrow at 10:30 with Joe Quesada and a bunch of the guys that did the Marvel Knights book. So we'll be signing tomorrow morning.
And
early.
we did the intros earlier. Joe was representing Dynamite, Lisa's representing Valiant. But tell them what Paper Films is.
Well, Paper Films is just a company. It's once in a while we put out some creator-owned books. We push our own work out there in multimedia stuff. So we do a lot of multimedia things, and we make a little noise. We're not publishing as much as we should, but we're definitely out there.
And what are your social media handles?
Just my name and Paper Films, both on Twitter.
Big round of applause for our editors. Thank you guys so much for coming.